Hello, everyone around the world. You're welcome to Opportunity Desk live section. And today we have an amazing speaker and personality with us, Hauwa Ojeifo, and she'll be talking about sustainable advocacy during and after COVID-19. All around the world, everyone is kept at home, cities are on lockdown, nations are shut down, all because of the COVID virus. Today we have with us Hauwa Ojeifo, and she will be speaking to us how we can have sustainable advocacy during this COVID time and even after COVID. I hope you have a wonderful session. Hauwa is a Queen's Young Leader, and she is a voice for, she has been advocating for mental health all around in Africa, in Nigeria, and also she has a wealth of experience to share with us today. So I want you to sit back and relax even as we join Hauwa Ojeifo. Hauwa, you're welcome to
Hi.
the live.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. You guys have such a vibrant community. Absolutely love it.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you very much. So Hauwa, just tell us a little bit about yourself before we go on.
Okay, so I am a mental health advocate and I have been advocating for mental health for 4 years. I have, and I call myself an accidental advocate of some sort. So a lot of times people want to go into advocacy or they want to do something for the communities. And what tends to happen is that perhaps they feel like they don't have the knowledge, the skills, the expertise to be able to do that. And so what I am doing and what I'm doing now is that I'm trying as much as possible to give back of my experiences. I have thankfully been, exposed to certain international opportunities. I have been awarded internationally as well, but my background is really in, my background was in finance. And then I saw something that I was passionate about, something that touched me personally, and I decided to do something about it. And I can almost be certain that a lot of people who are advocates today or who are currently watching this will probably think in their minds that, you know what, that's actually me. Like, I don't have a certification or anything to show for it, but I'm passionate about this cause and I want to go for it. And that's where I would say that I can relate so much. So I have been running an organization called She Writes Woman. She Writes Woman Mental Health Initiative since 2016. And what we are is a movement that gives mental health a voice in Nigeria by empowering people who actually live with mental health conditions to advocate for their own rights, to co-create their own solutions and to tell their own stories. And, we have had immense success over the years in just being able to do this. We started the first helpline, privately held helpline in Nigeria in 2016. And then from there, we started like the only monthly mental health support group. And we started that, in same 2016, and we've held over 40, I think now it should be more than 51 editions since 2016. And then, we have also been at the forefront of being the voice of people who have mental health conditions in the legislation that is before the National Assembly for the mental health law that Nigeria doesn't have. So that is what I've been doing, and that's who I am. And professionally, I'm a mental health coach. So I help individuals, groups, organizations, resolve issues of their mind, their thoughts, emotions and behaviors so that they can, do what they want to do. They can achieve their fullest potential. They can make the impact that they want to make. They can, do all of those things. And that's what I do professionally.
All right. Thank you so much, Hauwa. Now, in the light of the COVID-19 that the world is plagued with right now, how can young people drive advocacy, in their local communities?
Sorry, I think I got cut off for a minute. Can you please repeat the question?
Okay, so I said that the world is plagued with the COVID-19 and all around the world, right? So how can young people now take initiative and drive advocacy towards the situation at hand?
Yeah, I mean, fantastic question. The thing is that as the world is changing right now, and by the way, a lot of people will tell you it's not changing, it has changed. But I do believe that there's a lot more change that is still happening in the midst of all of this crisis. But a lot of times, the kind of conversation we're hearing is, people within the business space and the for-profit space, talking about how things are changing, how businesses are going to change, and all of that. But not enough people are talking about how there are changes that are going to affect the non-profit space, and in particular, people who are advocates, the changes that we need to be aware of. So as young people everywhere, whether it's in Africa or, the Americas or Europe or wherever you are, we need to understand our role in creating a new reality. We need to understand that we're not just supposed to sit back and wait for all the big corps and the governments and the people in the for-profit space or the technocrats to make all the changes and then bring these changes to us. We are supposed to, at this point in time, this is such an unprecedented time. So if you're somebody who's an advocate that has been, doing anything regarding, you know, um, whether it's healthcare, the truth is in this pandemic, we are seeing before our eyes, our very eyes, the worst of our system. Whether it's healthcare, whether it's food security, whether it's agriculture, whether it's, whatever space you are in, you are seeing a whole new light to it right now. And if, for what I would say to young people right now is that we need to begin to look at the system. We need to begin to use very, very critical minds to step back and look at the system and understand that whatever change that we're trying to advocate for, whatever change or solution that we're trying to design, have to be systemic in our approach, because that's the only way a lot of times that we can build in sustainable solutions. And I understand that there is a place for first response and there's a place for immediate response and things like that. But we need to start thinking on a more, on a more holistic sort of point of view in looking at the system. So take, for example, healthcare. More than ever, we are seeing that, our systems are in shambles. And, when people tell me that the system is broken, I tend to tell them, no, the system is not broken. Actually, it's working exactly the way it is supposed to work. But now you have to ask yourself, does this work for the furthest behind? Does this work for the most vulnerable people? Is this something that, we like the way it works? Okay. I don't know why I keep getting kicked out, but okay. But we need to understand our role in this process. We need to start looking at the system completely and then start designing solutions, taking into consideration the system, and that's one of the reasons why, I created this free guide, which I call the Advocates Guide, because at this point in time, we are, I mean, I'm a big believer that, not everything is a good or bad situation. Sometimes it's a matter of perspective. And that's how I look at, this entire pandemic. It is a necessary event to show us on different levels, aspects of our system that is just not working, So when I created the Advocates Guide, I thought to myself, like, now more than ever, especially African advocates, we need to begin to look at opportunities, understand how to make impact and understand how to create solutions. We need to understand our value inside this entire value chain, so that when we're thinking about governance or when you're just thinking about for-profit space, we don't feel lost. We understand that there is a role that people in non-profit leadership, that there is a role that people, with people that advocate for things need to play. But it's going to be much more than just sensitization. It's going to be much more than just awareness. It's going to be much more than just outreaches and volunteering. It's going to be much more than just doing work. It's about, do we know where all of this is headed to? Is it a part of a grand plan? Do we understand what activities need to take place over time for us to achieve certain objectives so that certain outcomes can be the case? And that's the mindset that I had when I was creating this. And that's why, if you look at the workbook, it's so fundamental, like it's so basic, but it's so profound. It's such a way that even if you've been in the advocacy space for 4 years, you'll still come back and be like, okay, I think some things have changed. I feel like at the very root of all of this, I feel like a lot of us didn't set up our advocacy on very, very good foundations, and for good reason, because we started from a place where we're passionate and we just rushed into it and we started doing our thing and started, seeing some results, and then we went on with it. But a lot of times we don't see enough development programs for advocates. We don't see a lot of people telling you this is how to problem map. This is how to map out your solution. This is how to design things. This is how to do human-centered design. This is how to take all of those concepts and put it into your everyday advocacy so that you can actually create the impact that you want. And that's why, I created this and I put it into 4 sections. 4 sections, and section 1 being the problem, section 2 being the environment, section 3 being you, the advocate, and section 4 being, the solution itself. And when I talk about section 1, I talk about 5 things in each of these sections. So in section 1, I talk about identifying the problem. I say, ask yourself, am I seeing a problem or the consequence of a problem? And I find this to be very profound, not because, only the root problem is the most important problem, but because when you know the problem that you are trying to solve, when you know that, okay, I'm solving the consequence of this problem and that's okay, it helps you know that there is something at play, that there's something at the larger scale that is affecting your problem. So a lot of times I tell people that every time we do problem mapping in my organization, she writes woman, or I sit down and I just do it, sometimes I tend to do it as a hobby. I don't know who does problem mapping for hobbies, but when I do it, I realize certain things, especially in Nigeria, for example, I realize certain things that hold true. Every time we problem map for the mental health space, and this is mental health we're talking about, very important. It seems like a healthcare problem and all of that. But every time we problem map, it comes down to 3 things that we realize are the real problem. Number 1 is poverty, number 2 is education, and number 3 is unemployment. Imagine mental health. And all of a sudden, when we narrow down, we find that these 3 things are the things that are actually the root problem. And that's what I need people to begin to understand. So maybe you're trying to solve a sexual and reproductive health right problem, or maybe you're trying to advocate for LGBTQ rights, or maybe you're trying to advocate for environmental sustainability. There are other factors that are at play that are the root of the issue that you're trying to deal with. And it is so important for you to know that, because that gives you a holistic approach. That helps you know where your alliances should come in. That helps you know what intersects, so that you can decide to say, okay, you know what, we could solve this problem by actually solving this seemingly unrelated problem. And there are so many organizations that are doing that. They are solving problems that have to do with education, but guess what? They are doing content on the internet, and you're like, oh, really? So I want us to begin as advocates. We need to begin to see the big picture as against what just seems immediate, because a lot of times what is immediate is not always what is sustainable. And that's something that I want us to leave here with today. And the second thing I talk about in this section is map and research the problem. And I said, spend quality time researching the problem you wish to solve. You need to know it inside out to be able to know the best way to approach it. A lot of us don't do problem mapping, and that's like truth. We don't sit down before we run into a project and say, well, let me understand the nature of this project. What's the evolution of this project? How did it come about? When did it get worse? What happened in the space? Was it a political change? Was it a social change? What happened in the larger economy? What happened on a micro scale? Understand and research your problem. And a lot of times, because we're so digitally savvy, we think just a few WhatsApp messages or broadcasts qualifies for a full-on research. I'm not saying that we should discount that. I'm just saying that, for example, if your most vulnerable target audience are people in rural areas who are not digitally included, and you do a survey on WhatsApp and Google Forms and you send that out, I need you to realize that, there are limitations to the data you've gotten. Because in essence, what you're trying to say is, in essence, what your data is saying is that these are a certain group of people who have opinions on these other people. Or these are people who are digitally savvy. Maybe you can then say, okay, at least we've gotten data for people who are digitally savvy. Now, how do we get data from the people who are most, affected, or the most vulnerable, or the most disadvantaged people? Research your problem well, because it affects your ability to create a solution. It affects your ability to be creative and innovative in how you think. Because if you don't know the problem in and out, the factors that affected the people, all of that, you're just going to be shooting. You're just shooting without really aiming, and you're hoping, okay, I hope I meet the target. I hope I hit something, which a lot of times doesn't work very well in advocacy and nonprofit, because you're working with limited resources. And what funders are looking for are people who can maximize resources and make the most impact in the shortest period of time. So it is so important for you to map and research the problem. The third thing that I talk about under the problem is, who does the problem affect? And I say sometimes, too often we are speaking the right message to the wrong audience. Who is the most affected by this problem? If multiple groups, which groups do you want to target? And a lot of times, because in today's world, We are solving very complex problems. So what that is doing is that it's putting us in a place where we really need to look at who is being affected. We really need to know, okay, chances are that people that are affected are of different, demography, or psychography. They are different. And what you need to now begin to do is, okay, let me even further divide them, and then I'll be able to know who am I targeting. Because a lot of times what happens in design thinking, or human-centered design thinking, is that what is working for the urban area may not necessarily work for the rural area. What is happening in when you deploy a solution for people who are maybe educated to a certain kind of level, is not the same way that solution will be received for people who are maybe that have not gone to that have not had any formal schooling and things like that. So again, when you know who the problem affects and you're able to categorize it and be able to deliberately say, okay, I want to focus on people who are digitally savvy first, because that's my low hanging fruit, because we are digitally oriented and it's an easy way out for us to build traction. And then from there, we can now raise funding to be able to go into places that are more vulnerable. At least you know exactly what you're doing, as against trying to say, oh, we are targeting this entire people, and then you're using digital solutions, but you're using rural solutions, and it's like, wait, who are you really targeting at this moment in time, and what kind of impact are you trying to make short term or long term? Another thing that I talk about is starting with the end in mind. We know this in business, or we know this when we're doing goal setting or planning and things, strategic processes and stuff like that. But for some reason, when it comes to nonprofit or strategy, or advocacy strategy, we somehow forget it. We somehow forget that we need to also know, what does it look like for my problem to be solved? Where am I headed to? And we totally forget sometimes that we need to make these smart as well. Where am I headed to? What does it look like in 10 years? What does it look like for my problem to be solved? Where do I need to reach in order for me to accomplish my organization's mission, or in order for me to feel like we have done our part in terms of this problem. And a lot of times, that's why in this part of the world, we tend to hold certain things to our chest. We tend to hold our organizations to our chest. A lot of times organizations have mandates, and once that mandate is fulfilled, they wrap up, they transfer their entire manpower and name and all of that to be absorbed by another organization, and they move on to something else. But here, because we don't always know where we are ending, we keep going and going and going and going, and guess what? We're not even really hitting the target. We're not really achieving the kind of impact that we should be achieving, because we haven't really been very clear about what our strategic mission is. And the last thing that I talk about under this section is spotting the gaps. A lot of times, what we are trying to introduce into the space is the product, not an organization. Is a program, not an organization. And this is something that the earlier we are able to understand that and make peace with, the better for us, the better for the system, the better for your funding, the better for your objective. Because when you drag out a project that has achieved its mission into, because you want to make it into an organization per se, it could have certain potential kinds of challenges that perhaps you, as the lead advocate or founder, may feel like, I'm not equipped to handle this. Because guess what? You were supposed to be a program lead. You were supposed to initiate and finish up a project, as against making it into an organization. But when you spot the gaps in a system, you're able to know, am I improving on something that exists? Is there something that people are doing that they haven't done? How about this angle to things? Maybe I should take it from this angle, because that's a part that hasn't been done. And sometimes it will be better off that we understand that there are certain projects or programs or initiatives that we have that we should actually go and put under certain organizations, so that we have the capacity to handle it, as against feeling like, what, I have to do my own. Because again, you have to understand, it's not about you, it's about the problem, it's about the solution, and by extension, it's about the beneficiaries. It's the people who are going to benefit from it that you want to be most concerned about, and you want to put them at the forefront of this decision that you are making. So that is all that I talk about in the first section of this workbook, the Advocate's Guide. And I will proceed to the next section, which is the environment. And this is super, super important, because in my experience, I see a lot of people who are in the nonprofit space, and myself included when I started, again, because we're accidental advocates, because we're people who are really passionate. And a lot of times what happens is that we're people who have we're very enthusiastic and optimistic and very daring and fearless. We just run into it, and with all the energy, and we open an account and get a domain name, get social media, and we're pushing it and we're going in on it. We forget to do some real due diligence and really understanding our environment. And the first thing I talk about here is on the identifying key players. Who are the key players, local and international players? Study them, understand their models, understand their impact, understand their history. And why is that important? It's important because chances are that when you're going into a space, you probably didn't study international development, or you didn't study advocacy, or you probably didn't study, social impact or social entrepreneurship and things like that. So the truth is that you're going to have to learn from other people's doing. And that's something that people tend to skip over. And then what tends to happen is that, they get stuck, or like, oh, I don't know how to write reports, or we're doing a lot of things over time, and all of a sudden we have nothing to really show for it. Maybe when it comes to people trying to invest in our solution and things like that. So study people, see what they're doing. When I first started, like, I had all these mental health organizations in US, in Australia, in India, in UK, that I will sit down and I'll study. I'll comb through their websites. I'll see what their reports look like. I'll try and mimic their reports. I'll try and use what they have to say. Do we have this? Why don't we have this? Oh, let's start having this. And it gives you a whole lot of. It's like you are learning. It's almost like you're doing like an MBA from experience, from somebody else's experience. And that is so important. Identify your key players. And it's also important because it would lead you to the next thing that I'm talking about, which is talking to people in the sector. And I say, so often forgotten, we tend to run into actions without really talking to stakeholders in the space. Compile questions and get answers from people with relevant experience. That's what I say here. And that is so important because people who are already in the space have a certain kind of perspective. They know the problem, they've been inside, they probably are people who have gone ahead of you. And maybe they're able to fill in the gaps of things that maybe you were not able to read, or events that happened, and they are there to answer your questions. They're there to like give you perspective. And you two are there to also give them perspective as well. So it's important that, when you look at all of these things, you are able to go and talk to people, not just identifying them, but go and try and talk to them, and if you have done the problem aspect of the workbook properly, when you sit down and talk to people in your sector, you are able to know the kind of questions to ask them, because you have researched the problem, you've mapped out the problem, you know who your beneficiaries are, you're able to talk to them from a more informed perspective, as against what a lot of people complain, that people are asking them so many questions, but they're not really like, they don't feel like the questions are, in depth enough, or they're not rich enough, or they're questions that they could have Googled. Then why are you coming to me? If people are going to give you time to come and sit down and talk to them and all of that, make it worth their while, and make sure that you too have done your own homework in ensuring that you know exactly what you're talking about, what the information you want from them. The third thing I talk about in this section is what systems and structures exist. I'm not saying you have to go into policy advocacy, and I'll add this to the next one, which is what laws and policies exist. However, sometimes you need to realize that the reason certain aspects of the problem that you're trying to solve have not been solved is because of certain existing policies. It's because of a systemic issue. It's because of a kind of structure that your sector is working with. And maybe you need to understand how to achieve what you want to achieve within the frame of that structure, or you need to absolutely just like work towards destroying and bringing down that entire system. And that's why people tend to have different approaches when they are solving certain kinds of problems. But you need to know the laws. You need to know what limits you, what aids you, what's holding the system back, what is the system favoring some people over others, and how can you as an advocate change that. And the last thing I talk about here is what's out of your control, because we're very ambitious people. We're very ambitious advocates. We want to see change. We want to go to places that people dare not go. We want to talk to people that people don't, you say what your dreams are, and people are like, wow, really? Oh my God, okay. But know what is out of your control and know what's within your control. Not because what is out of your control is a static thing, but the truth is that it changes. When I started mental health advocacy in 2016, there was something that I had said was not within my control, and that was policy. That was anything that had to do with mental health law, legislation. I had said, not within my control at the moment in time, because at this moment, all I want to do is I need to do sort of a proof of concept. I need to show that the solution that I'm working towards works. I need to show people that it's doable, and I need to show people that I can do it with my own personal investment, so that when donors come, they can see that this is what I've been able to do it. So my entire mindset was different, and I had said, you know what, policy is out of my control. But guess what? Fast forward to 2020, now I realize that it's no longer out of my control. Now we have an unprecedented opportunity in Nigeria's, mental health history or legacy to change our mental health law from the Lunacy Act of 1958 to something more, relevant and human rights respecting. And, you need to, if you don't know what is out of your control, you're going to keep trying to do things that are not within your capacity. too early in a way that it burns you out and it discourages you from doing the work that you do. So it is so important for you to be able to map it out very quickly early on to say, okay, this is where I'm headed, this is what I'm doing. And for now, these are the things that will be out of my control, even though I know they exist. Remember, we are coming from a place of knowing the systems and structures and knowing the laws and the policies. However, after knowing all of that and knowing how they influence, you're able to make an informed decision to say, okay, no, I'm going to hold this here, and this is what I'm going to deal with for now. And then when that time comes, I'm going to now shift into this, and that will be my strategic focus of some sort. So that wraps up section 2. So in section 3, and I love this section so much. Section 3 is called you. Yes, you, Y-O-U, you. And that's because I have a common quote that I've used on my page, and that is, you cannot separate the advocacy from the advocate, no matter how you try, especially early on in your advocacy. Your advocacy work, your nonprofit, is going to take on your own personal, it's going to take on your personality, it's going to take on your values, it's going to take on your limitations, it's going to take on your weaknesses. So when you start with, and that's what I say in the first one, I say it's time to self-audit. I really hope that, I don't know, since I'm not like interfacing directly with people because I can't see any chat, but I really hope that, people might be following with the workbook, because that sort of helps. So if you don't have the workbook, I'm sure they would have it somewhere in the link somewhere, So I say it's time to self-audit. And what I'm saying is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? How can you leverage the skills you already have? What are your values and what beliefs drive you? A lot of times, we see it a lot when it comes to professional development or personal development as far as for-profits go, helping executives. Maybe you see them having things like executive coaches, people coming to teach them about emotional intelligence, and stuff like that. But we don't do that a lot in the advocacy space. And guess what? We need it more than ever. We need it more than a lot of people. You need to audit yourself. You need to understand that what you see as your worldview is not everybody's worldview. You need to begin to break down your beliefs. Your beliefs are, what are those thoughts that you have held on for so long that have become the lens through which you view life? So for some people, they will say like, hard work pays. It's a kind of belief. You may think it's a truth. It's not a universal truth. I don't believe hard work pays, and that doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just that it has consequences. So you that says hard work pays, you end up going on a journey where you work so hard. And somebody else may say, oh, no, actually, I believe that no matter what I do, I make significant impact. Do you see the difference between those two beliefs? That is literally what happens to a lot of advocates. We are running on certain kinds of beliefs that either limit or empower us and empower our advocacy in the process. Now, I'm only using those two as very loose examples, but maybe on a personal level, you can begin to think about, what are the things that I hold true about life? What are the things that I hold true about advocacy? What are the things that I hold true about opportunities? There are people that see opportunities where maybe they qualify for like 50% of the opportunity, but they don't put their hearts out. They don't put themselves into the situation to get it, because they feel like, no, it's not for me. Oh, I'm not there yet. It's for people that are, abroad. It's for people that have international fellowship. And I'm like, why are you talking yourself out of opportunities? Those are limiting beliefs. Those are beliefs that will inhibit how you advocate. Because now more than ever, guys, now more than ever, this situation is showing us that we need bold solutions. We need bold, fearless solutions to complex problems. We cannot do advocacy like we used to do advocacy before. Awareness, sensitization, all of those things, however important, are only tools. They are not the full thing. We need to begin to use them as the strategic tools that they are, as against, this is what my own advocacy is about. We need to understand what it means to bring down systems. We need to be able to hold governments and systems accountable. We need to be able to galvanize and mobilize. And that could be different things on different levels. So I need you to understand why you, as an advocate, your own self-audit is so important, because it projects in your work. It projects in the skills that you go and cultivate. And it's not as if you say, oh, just because I have that weakness, then I'm not going to go there. But at least you know that that is an area of improvement for you. And then you can begin to say, okay, when I'm building my team, so that this organization or this advocacy work does not take on my weakness, I will employ people who can fill in this gap, fill in this gap, fill in this gap, so that you are a more whole and bold organization, and you're able to carry out your mandate. So what are your values? What are the things that you hold close? The reason why these values are so important is because they are going to affect the people that you go into alliances with. Your values. See, people think that when you go and create partnerships and you go and seek collaborations, that it's only about, oh, we're in the same space, oh, they can help me, or things like that. It's not just about being in the same space that qualifies somebody as your partner. It is aligned values that cause partnerships to thrive. So a lot of times we just reach out to people that, oh, we're in the same space, let's do something together, and I'm like, okay, what do we do? It's the value. So let me give you a classic example. And I'm speaking from experience because a while ago I had very, very terrible partnership experiences that I'm very glad that I had. Again, it wasn't good or bad, it was necessary because I learned. And I realized that, I thought that this organization, I'd admired this organization from afar, and then all of a sudden we're in a position where we could do something together. And I was so swamped, and I just got so carried away with all of that without really trying to check, do the values align? And I realized that for this organization, they were more about a lot of optics, which is not, again, a bad thing. They were also about hard work, like we must run ourselves, we must work all night and all of that. But guess what? My organization has taken on one of my values, which is peace of mind. As much as we make a lot of impact, we put the mental health of our team at a priority. We're not going to run ourselves into exhaustion or into burnout for anything, because first, we are the beneficiaries of our own work. So there was already a mismatch, and then it began to clash with others. So a lot of times, what that taught me was that, look, an organization may be perfectly positioned in your space, in your sector, to be your partner. But if the values don't align, I really, really implore you to go and take a second look at it. Because a lot of times that is what makes or mars relationships or partnerships or alliances and things like that. So it is so important that you take the time to do a self-audit. The next thing I talk about is outlining your experiences. What experiences make you strategically positioned, or uniquely advantaged to advocate for the problem that you're trying to advocate. So for me, in mental health space, I'm a person who has lived with a mental health condition since 2016. I got diagnosed, I had a near suicide attempt. I'm still on this antidepressant till today. So guess what? It gives me insight into an experiential point of view. Because prior to my organization in Nigeria, a lot of people who used to do advocacy, and still quite a number of people who still do advocacy, are people who are in the medical space or psychologists and all of that. And a lot of people did not connect with them because they felt like, hey, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, but you are talking too much like an academic. I need somebody who understands from an experiential perspective. And that's where people sort of gravitated to what we do at She Writes Woman, because they were like, wow, I love it because you have been there and you're speaking from experience as against, textbook that we could Google and things like that. That's not to say those people don't have their place. Guess what? They too have a unique advantage because guess what? They are medical practitioners or they are psychologists. Do you understand what I mean? So there is something, and that's a concept that we need to understand, is there is power within and there's power without. Because you are not in a space could be one of the reasons why you are positioned uniquely and favorably to advocate for a certain kind of solution. A lot of people ask me, well, what if I don't have a direct correlation with the problem? What if it's just something I'm passionate about? Exactly. That could be a reason why you see the problem differently and you're able to solve it differently from the people who have personal experiences. But you need to sit down and know, what are your life experiences? It doesn't have to be connected to it. But what are the things that you've experienced in your own life that give you a unique view about looking at certain kinds of issues around? So another thing I talk about is assessing your why power. A lot of people talk about willpower, but I say let's hold on willpower. I don't want to get too neuroscientific about willpower, but at some point you can't tell certain people to talk about their willpower because the part of their brain that is controlling that is not the part that is at work at that point in time. So your why power is your why. Why do you do what you do? Because you're going to have to wake up with the same enthusiasm for this course in 5 to 10 years time as you wake up with it today. Your why will be the reason you would be pumped, you will feel like you're being dragged and you're tired and you're frustrated and you're angry, or oh, it's not even fulfilling. I'm tired of this. What is your why? You need to nail it, and you need to nail it early on, because this journey, however impactful, can also be very exhausting, challenging. For the first couple of years, it feels like you're hitting your head against the wall and nothing is changing, and you're just giving off yourself, just giving and giving and giving, and you feel you can't really feel. Maybe there'll be glimpses of impact here and there, or things that console you. But a lot of times at the beginning, it's like, oh my God, when will I make the kind of impact that I really want to make? Okay. So another thing you want to talk about is what's your one thing. I talk about what's your one thing because you're going to need it very early on in the process. You're going to need it because the advocacy journey is not smooth like this or always like upward trajectory. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, and all of that. So what is that one thing that even when things are down, even if you're not being paid, even if you don't have the resources, you are able to do? I'm a talker. I can talk. That's my one thing. Any day, anytime, Hauwa is talking about it. And it's not just because I talk, but because I know that I over the years, I know that I have been an impactful, speaker of some sort. So that's my one thing, irrespective of how things are. When I'm called to talk, and of course I have the time and the effort or the means and resources to be able to carry out that, I will do that. That's my one thing. What is your one thing? For some people, it's community mobilization. Just drop them within a community. They know how to sing and dance and mobilize people, and people come around them and they know how to talk. What is your one thing? If you don't audit, you will not find that thing that keeps you going. It helps you. It makes you tick. It fuels you. It's almost like, it's like a drug that just keeps you high. Don't do drugs. But I'm saying, like, what is the one thing you need to know? And the last thing I talk about here is personal development. Super important, personal development, because a lot of times we think personal development equals professional development. So we think we're saying just go and learn about advocacy, learn about grant writing, learn about this, which are all, amazing skills that you can pick up. But what I'm really talking about here is personal development. I'm talking about like what I started with self-care. Things like go and do emotional intelligence courses, go and learn to network. A lot of us, maybe we don't know how to network, or we don't know how there's an art to it or a science to it. A lot of us don't know how to maybe do public speaking. And just because you feel like you're a natural doesn't mean you cannot hone that skill. And that's something that a mistake we tend to make in this climb. We tend to feel like, oh, if I feel like I'm naturally gifted or I have this talent of doing something, and then all of a sudden that's it. No. That's the more reason why you should go and develop it. That's the more reason why you should sharpen it. That's the more reason why you should go and learn from, the best in the field, read their books, watch their YouTube videos, take some online courses. I find that it's a trend that advocates somehow feel like there is a sense of entitlement to free stuff, and I just feel like it is so wrong. Like, we cannot have that mindset because it has consequences. It has consequences because you're always going to feel like you're supposed to be given something. You are supposed to be gifted with an opportunity. No, go and pay for an opportunity. Go and pay and take a certification. Go and pay to, get taught something. Go and pay for an extra, degree or whatever it is that you need to do. There are so many online courses out there. Go and pay to develop yourself. I tell people I have done more work in understanding sales and marketing and psychology of consumer behavior and all of those things than I've actually done in saying, let me read an advocacy book. So again, you have to develop yourself, because your advocacy will take on your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, your beliefs, and all of those things that you think that is just me. It's not really my work. It is one entity, especially at the beginning. So please do that. And right before I go into the last section, on that note, I don't know if I should announce, but I have a 3-hour free training on May 1st, which I think might be very, very valuable to anyone who wants it. So it's the same link except advocate class instead of advocate guide. So advocate class. So it's a 3-hour training for advocates, and it is how to be an advocate that actually makes impact. Okay. Section 4 is on the solution. So you see how we have gone all this way before we even got to the solution. On the contrary, when we sit down and we want to advocate for something, what tends to happen is that we start with the solution. Like, we just go and like, this is what I want to start doing. This is where I need to go. And I'm like, hold on, let's breathe. Let's backtrack. So this and the flow of this workbook was intentional. I could have started with the solution and just said, oh, that was random. But the thing is, I wanted you to start with the problem. And then I wanted you to understand the environment. And then I wanted you to start with you, because chances are that by the time you go through all of this, you are looking at the solution very differently. You now see different ways to approach the solution, as against thinking what you thought before, where you had the idea that, oh yeah, let's go, let's do this. So you need to be very, very, you need to go through the process and understand the wisdom in this arrangement, so that you can, the desired impact is what really happens. I start off by saying, who are your allies? And by now, if you have gone through all the other sections properly, you would know who your allies are. Because now you have not just looked at the problem, but you have looked at the environment, you have talked to key players and all of that. But guess what? You now know your values and beliefs, and you know the kind of people you want to get in bed with. You don't, I mean, an organization can be good in terms of impact, does not mean that they are good in terms of value alignment for you. So understand that it's not just about running out there to say, oh, let's collaborate, let's do something big just because it's going to be good for the optics and things like that. Optics are nice, but you have to really come down to doing authentic work. And authentic work is staying true to your values and your beliefs at any given point in time. So who are your allies? Who are the people that share your values and are positioned to be the best fit for your vision, for your mission, for that thing that you want to achieve in the work that you want to do? And I talk about what's life with the problem solved. And that takes me back to the first one when I said start with the end in mind. What's life with the problem solved? So when you think about your beneficiary and you think about, oh, you have solved their problems, what does their life look like? Because it gives you a sense of what the end is. And then what happens is that at least maybe you're able to at least put some 10 steps back to the present. And then it gives you an idea of what your 1 year plan is, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And then you have a trajectory to work with. What happens a lot of times is that we're just going wherever it leads us. Tomorrow let's do a walk. Next tomorrow let's do digital campaign. And we have this overwhelming sense of we need to be busy. There's this urge to be busy as advocates. Let's be busy. These people, they are doing online. Oh my God, they are doing live stream. Let's be busy. Let's go out there. Visibility is fantastic. But visibility without working towards your mission is just being busy. You're not actually being productive. Because productivity for you as an advocate is being measured by how well you are meeting your objectives, your goals, and your outcomes. And if you're not meeting them with all your busyness, then you are actually wasting resources. So you need to understand the end and understand the steps to take to where the end is and be able to stick to your strategic focus and sort of rise above the need to always be busy and to always be visible. Then talk to your beneficiary. We do this a lot where we start projects and we go and impose projects and solutions on a group of people without talking to them about what they really want. Go and talk to your beneficiaries and let them be the ones to tell you what the solution looks like. We have this inner savior mentality, and it happens to the best of us, where we feel like, it's almost like this is what I was placed on earth to do. This is what I'm called to do. So guess what? We go in there, we get solutions, we send to people, we go there, we deploy. No, hold on. You haven't talked to the people that are affected by this. They haven't told you that this is what they want. They haven't told you that this is a priority. And I usually talk about a story about a case study that we studied during one of our fellowships. And, it was about, I think it was about a community in India, if I'm not mistaken. It's about a community in India. And, there was this organization that was trying to do something about domestic violence. And what happened was that, they went there thinking, they went there going to talk to, the women in the area, like, okay, you guys, make sure when this happens, you report to us. We are here. This is where we're located and all of that. So, and they noticed that they weren't quite forthcoming, because guess what? They already had in mind what the solution was going to be. So they went there to only deploy. But when they now brought in, I think it was IDEO, so to come and do human-centered design thinking. And, this is such an amazing case study, such a much longer case study, but I'm just trying to shrink it. And they realized that what the solution was supposed to be, or what the people had said the solution would be, was that they needed their neighbors to be the ones to come and take them out of violent situations. So guess what? What they did was that they empowered the community, as against going from woman to woman to say, come and meet us, come and meet us, come and meet us if you ever get abused by your husband and all of that. They empowered the community in such a way that they said, if anybody hears that, and this was obviously a rural community where, you can hear what's going on in your neighbor's house and things like that. If you hear, the husband is beating the wife or vice versa or whatever, this is a whistle, blow it, and when others hear it, they should blow it or, raise alarm. And then they will go as a community to go and take the woman out of the situation. And that was the solution that worked. Now, imagine if they just sat down and said, no, you have to come to us. We have set up a clinic. They didn't tell you that they wanted a clinic. They didn't tell you they wanted a walking center. They didn't tell you that they wanted to walk. So it is so important that we talk to our beneficiaries and really listen to what they're saying. And it's this idea that we feel like our beneficiaries don't know what they want, but we know more than our beneficiaries. Not necessarily. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort. So you may know all the fancy things and all the techniques and all of that, but they know their problem. And don't, it's best to not go there thinking, I know your problem more than you lose out on a huge opportunity to, make the kind of change that your beneficiary. The next thing is to put pen to paper. So I tell people, if you've gone through this entire workbook, at this point in time, you should already have a strategic plan. You should already have something that like a bit of a working plan for yourself or for your organization. You should be able to say, this is what it is. You should be able to not just think it in your head, because I find that, I've done over 10 hours of explaining this workbook over the last week. And, what happens a lot of times is that people are just scrolling on their phone and they're just thinking the answers. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. There's a reason why there are big check boxes beside all of this, because it's supposed to be that when you have done the research, you have done the work, you tick it and say it's done. So put pen to paper and actually write out, do your solutions, carry out your research, type it out, and so you can see it right before you. And the next thing I talk about is your next 7 steps, because by now you should know the next thing you need to do. I should do this, and not just knowing the next thing, but when are you going to do it, and who's going to hold you accountable? Because a lot of times what happens is that we're working we are sole advocates, especially in the beginning. Everything revolves around us, so there's nobody to hold you accountable, especially if you don't have like the structure that you need to have, when you're first starting out. There's nobody to tell you you were supposed to, this is supposed to be your goal for this month, you haven't done that. Or you said you're going to attend that training and you haven't attended that training. Why? And all of those things. So at this point in time, you should be able to highlight at least your next 7 steps with deadlines and who is going to hold you accountable for all of those things. So I hope that wraps it up. Like I said, I am holding a 3-hour free training on May 1st, 4 p.m. West African time. You can sign up with the link in my Instagram bio, or bit.ly/advocate class. bit.ly/advocate class. You can get all of that there. And yeah, that's about it for the yes. Questions.
Wow, awesome time there, Hauwa. Very insightful teaching you delivered right here. And I'm sure that most of our participants have really benefited from your wealth of experience and, dealing with mental issues and also advocating for mental issues. It's been really, really insightful and very interesting listening to. Okay, so we would have questions coming right now from our participants. Okay.
Okay. Oh, now I'm seeing all the questions. How do you? Okay. So I'm seeing a question here. Okay. I see. How do you formulate a powerful action plan? I don't know. Is that the first question, or am I reading this? Oh, I'm just seeing all the questions. So, how do you formulate a powerful action plan? Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Am I still live? Yes. Okay. So when you look at the workbook, the truth is, what are you trying to achieve? And that gives you your action plan. Because there are 2 things off the top of my head that I can give you as a start. When you problem map and you network map, it gives you a fantastic action plan. It gives you direction, because when you problem map, it helps you know the problem. When you network map, it helps you know the people who are aligned to help you solve your solution with you. And then every other thing now comes from a place of, what are your resources, what are the things you have, because for some people, maybe they have the money to spend, they have the resources, maybe they have, angel donors that are there to back them up. And then for most people, maybe you're just starting and you don't have that just yet. So now you're looking for, what are the most cost-effective ways that I can create an action plan? And that's why a lot of people tend to start with things like, social media. They start with things like that. They start with things that are least expensive, that there's a very low barrier to entry, so that they can begin to show traction. Your action plan from the beginning, as far as I'm concerned, should be a proof of concept. Should be able to show people that the problem you're trying to solve is even worthy of their time and effort. So I remember in my very first live stream about 2 Thursdays ago, on the 16th of April, I remember asking a question, and I was like, "Tell me what problem you're trying to solve, and let's see if I can help you out." And then somebody said, people were talking about, oh, plastic pollution and this and that, and I was like, "See, this is the issue, and this is what I'm trying to solve. When you tell me an issue, I can say, okay, so now what? What do you want me to do with that information? You told me, oh, there's plastic pollution. Okay, so what do you want me to do? What is the problem? It's not tell me an issue. I can say, oh, there's an issue with mental health in Nigeria. Okay, that's not the problem I'm trying to solve. What am I trying to solve?" And you have to ask yourself that. And that's why I started by saying you need to know the problem, so that you know where to insert yourself, so that you know that, okay, this is the problem, this is the part of the problem that I can take on and try and solve. It has to be something solvable. You can't just tell me that this is the problem and then a lot of times we run with that and that becomes our action plan. No, your action plan is what takes you from where you are to where the solution is solved, or where you have said this is where your vision is accomplished. So problem mapping and network mapping are two things combined with understanding where you are as an advocate, whether it's in your resources, your personal capacity, your one thing, whether it's all of those things, and then to give you a bit of an action plan for you to move forward. I hope that gives a bit of a direction. How can I get a mentor to guide me through my advocacy? Oh no, that's not the next question. What's the best way to put together? Yeah. How can a young person in a marginalized community begin as an advocate? Oh, that's such a fantastic question. I love questions that have to do with marginalized communities. And if by marginalized communities, I'm thinking, vulnerable, disadvantaged, communities and things like that. And I'm also thinking perhaps you don't have as many resources, but if you are on this call and you're listening to this, then perhaps you have internet and you have a smartphone. So I would say that is one of the major tools, because a lot of times people, like I said, people always ask me that, oh, how are you talking like this because you have been an advocate, you've gotten awards, and I'm like, no, the thing is that I didn't also have a background in advocacy. I'm also accidental. I just saw something that I was passionate about and I ran into it, So I learned on the way. So use the internet very wisely. There are resources. You guys, I can't even explain. There are resources. When people sit down and they say, "Oh, how come you write reporting so well? Like you do your report writing so well. How come you're this?" I learn. YouTube is like my resource. I learn from YouTube. Like I said, I learn from other organizations that are within my space. So you can begin. I'm not saying this is going to be all that there is to it, but you want to equip yourself so that you can start the process and hopefully get found out and hopefully learn in the process, because it's a journey. It's always, you continue to do that. You continue to learn, you continue to tweak, you continue to iterate. But if you don't know where you were before, you don't even know what you're changing. You don't know where you're iterating. You don't know, what's causing you to shift your direction or shift your strategy. So you need to be very, you need to first empower yourself with knowledge, information, resources, the network, and just having a smartphone with internet can do that for you. On social media, follow the right people, join the right, mentorship circles, or, take the right courses if you can. But there is a lot of free resources out there. So I would say start with free resources out there and work your way up. I'm seeing the questions in duplicates. Okay. Can I get a mentor to guide me through my advocacy? Absolutely. How can I get a mentor to guide me through my advocacy? So I think one of the things is that we generally think that a mentor has to be somebody that you have physical contact with. That's a lot of times we think that's a given. A lot of my mentors in advocacy, I've never met them before. I've read their books. I watch their live streams. If they have any, paid, membership clubs, that trust me to be there. If they have any, collaborations or courses, or trust me I would just push my head into it, because you have to understand that even as a mentor, they are also having their journey. And just the same way you want certain people to mentor you, hundreds of other people want to be mentored by them as well. And that would influence how they are able to the quality of the time and their capacity to mentor a lot of people while still going on their own journey. So sometimes your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be somebody you have personal contact with. You can be mentored by somebody through their books. You can be mentored through their social media. You can be mentored through their live streams. You can be mentored through their membership groups. I have a membership group, Mayfest. Don't worry, just sign up for the class in Mayfest. I think that I'll just put it at that. Because I've gotten this question like every single live stream that I've had, and I've had about 10. That's why I said I've had about 10 hours of free live streams over the past week. And it keeps coming up, mentorship, mentorship, mentorship. And I think, that's something that's so important. So on May 1st, I'm opening up something for mentorship. What challenges do you encounter as an advocate in Nigeria? Man, being an advocate in Nigeria, very, very interesting. I mean, first off, everything that affects doing any kind of venture in Nigeria is one of your first challenges. So whether it's basic things like power, when I say power, I mean like electricity, whether it's things like, funding or resources to do the work that you do, whether it is political barriers as well, and when I say political barriers, I don't necessarily mean that you have to be in a political space or doing policy advocacy. But like I said before, when I was talking about the environment, there are some systems and structures that are just strategically designed to stop certain kinds of progress or certain kinds of impact. So those kinds of things will always get in your way, and you're like, what is it? Somebody's trying to do good here, and you will just be there trying to frustrate the person. The bureaucracy is something else in certain situations that I'm just like, you know what, guys? Thank you. I think I'm just going to focus on somewhere else, So it can be very, very daunting and frustrating. I can talk about the challenges from now to God knows when, but it's just not something that I tend to pay a lot of attention to, because how I like to look at it is if I know that this is the next direction that I'm supposed to go, and I've done all my groundwork with everything, I've done all of that. The next thing I do is that I focus on what I can achieve. I focus on what I can achieve. I focus on, okay, if they're not letting me that way, what can we do? Or who has the access? Or who is somebody that can be an ally? I always have that attitude of it will be done. It will be done. Somehow, we will get it done. So I don't dwell so much on the challenges, because once you just go into the challenges, it's like it's a never-ending place. You just keep swirling in and in and in. And I have to say, it's almost sometimes it's like the odds are stacked against you as an advocate in Nigeria. And being at it's something that's still fresh in terms of what's still brewing, this generation of advocates, and all of that, it requires a lot of groundbreaking. And when I say groundbreaking, I mean like take a shovel or, whatever it is, and start breaking the ground. That's how tough it is. How do you identify beneficiaries? Oh, that's nice. I like that question. So it's problem mapping. So when I say problem mapping, let me just give a bit of an idea. Typically, I will have to draw and all of that, but I'll do that in my May class. But anyway, problem mapping is you are able to ask yourself. Let me give an example let me give an example of she writes woman. Let me use my own situation, mental health, and say, okay, so when we sit down and we're mapping a problem, as you map a problem, of course, you're mapping who is it a problem for. There's something we call advocacy issue. You don't just tell me what a problem is. You tell me you have to personalize it to a group of people for it to become an advocacy issue. So say mental health. Okay, so that's the general thing. So what is the actual problem? You can now say, oh, the actual problem is that people do not have access, or there is insufficient access to, I'm just giving an example, insufficient access to quality mental health care for women in disadvantaged communities, or women in low income communities, or whatever it is. And guess what? By mapping that problem, I have told myself who the beneficiary is already: women in low income communities. That's it. That is literally how you identify your beneficiaries. It is part of your problem mapping that shows you who your beneficiaries are. It is part of your problem mapping, because sometimes you can choose who your beneficiaries are. And that's why I said sometimes when you think about a problem, it doesn't mean that mental health only affects women in disadvantaged communities. No, it affects men, there's child mental health, it affects women who have gone through sexual abuse, it affects a broad range it affects every single person. But the truth is, when you're trying to solve a problem, you're not trying to solve everybody's problem. You're not trying to be all things to all people. If not, you're not going to be anything to anybody. So you want to be able to say, I choose, or you're able to look at your resources and your self-audit and your problem map and say, where is the most effective place, or where is the place I can make the most impact, or what is the thing that I can do in the shortest bit of time to help me gain a bit of traction, or to show my proof of concept, or to show my donors or potential donors that I can go into this area, or where is the area that I feel like is the most vulnerable. And then that directs you to who you want to focus on in identifying your beneficiaries. So I hope that gives a bit of an idea, because sometimes you have such a large pool of beneficiaries, but in crafting your problem statement, you should be able to say who your beneficiary is. And that's why when you talk about the problem, you're researching the problem, because when you research a problem and you map out the problem, you are by extension researching who is affected by the problem. Yeah. Any more questions? Any more questions? Oh, I see more questions. Thank you so much, Hauwa. This is insightful. Thank you, Grace. How can an advocate overcome the issue of funding? So there's something that I said in one of my live streams. I said, don't ask yourself, how can I get funding? Ask yourself, how can I be positioned to receive funding? When we start off, see, I started Shirai Tuman 2016 officially as an organization. The first time I ever wrote a grant application was in 2018. 2018, 2 years after, because I made it a duty that, you know what, I am not going to go and ask people for money to show a concept that nobody sent me to go and show. Nobody sent me. I'm the one that said I want to carry on this cause. So first off, I tell people, have you invested your own resources into it? Because that's where it starts. Because think about it like a business. I'm not going to come and invest in you if you don't put your own money inside. That means you don't trust what you are trying to solve. You don't trust yourself enough to be able to make the impact and get the traction that you're supposed to get. So for me, it is not just about how do I get funding. It is about, am I positioned to receive funding? And if you're positioned to receive funding, you would have certain things. Do you have audited financial statements? So has the organization grown in structure and in processes, so much so that you are now at a place where you guys have accounted for every single penny. You have budgets, you follow your budget strictly. You have an accountant, a qualified accountant. You have systems and structures in place to receive the funding. A lot of times there is funding. However, the organizations are not yet ready to receive that level of funding. We think a lot of times that our problems are about the funding, but it's not. Our problems are not really about the funding. It is that we have not grown our capacity to receive the kind of funding that we want to receive. So I would say the real question should be, how can I position myself to be worthy of funding? I mean, it would help you so much if you do all the right things, if you gained all the traction, if you have invested from yourself and you're within your network and you put that into it so that you can have reports, you can show for it, so that at some point, and this happened to me personally, so I can say for a fact, donor organizations, and I even mean international donors, will begin to tell you, please apply for this because we feel like you're worthy. Please apply for this because we want to find a way to fund you. They'll begin to look at you as an investable person or an investable advocate or advocacy movement or organization. So I think for me, that's the kind of response I would give to that. But it really is back to the structure you have built on the inside. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rebecca,
Wow, wow,
Margaret.
wow, wow. Amazing, amazing, amazing session it has been, Hauwa. You've really dug down deeper into this topic, sustainable advocacy during COVID-19 and even after. I'm sure that so many of our participants who have joined us today have learned a great deal from you. We have so many reactions from them. We have some people sending in emojis of fire, so many people saying things about insightful. Literally, you were on fire. That's so awesome. Rebecca Olatunji, I think our young person, one of our young persons of the month, and the winner of the OD Impact Challenge, said thank you very much. This was so insightful. Margaret
Oh,
Etu says thank you very much. This is resourceful. That's it's been a wonderful session with you, Howard, today, and thank you very
thank you
much
so
for
much.
your time. Okay, so participants, please do well to say something. One word, just one word to describe the, the session. One word from Hawa. And then Hawa, maybe you just give us a parting word. One last word for
Okay,
you too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Odie, for having me. I absolutely love this. I love that. I mean, just thank you for the opportunity to engage with, your community. It's such a vibrant one, like I said before. I would say for anybody that is listening to this, you have to do the work. Like that would be the summary. You have to do the work. It doesn't work except you do the work. And doing the work is putting pen to paper, is doing the research, is talking to people, it's going down to the basics. That is doing the work, and we have to be ready to do the work. So for me, there's no hard or fast rule about it. Invest in yourself, get resources online, join my Mayfest training and just do the work, because it doesn't happen accidentally. And just because you feel like you're doing advocacy doesn't mean it has to be mediocre. I keep telling people, you can't just do it anyhow. The world needs us. We are the people that halt government. We are the people that bring down systems. We are the ones that push for change. So what we're doing is not just it's just a pastime. Not necessarily. People's lives and livelihoods are literally hanging on our ability to advocate effectively for what we stand for. So do the work, invest in yourself, and just stay on course.
All right, guys, you've heard it from Hauwa Ojeifo. Now you can tweet at us at Opportunity Dex, and also you can also tag Hauwa Ojeifo and also myself. You can see our hashtags on the screen. Now, as Howard said, you cannot take the advocate out of advocacy, and so you just have to develop yourself, and you have to do that consciously. You have to be deliberate about your own personal development. Howard, thank you so much for
Thank
this
you
time.
so
Thank you for
much.
what you've done. Thank you for sharing this wealth of knowledge with us today. And we're so grateful. Thank you. All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
So, everyone, please, thank you for joining us. And we come your way again on Friday with another exciting episode of the OD Live. Ensure to join us on Friday. Have a wonderful time, and please, please, please stay safe. We need you, and the world needs you. Stay safe. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.